History doesn't start the moment you start paying attention. A lot of people have opinions about Israel and Palestine. As far as I'm concerned, the numbers tell the story just fine. Don't need an opinion. Palestine does not have an army, or a navy, or an air force. Hamas has a military wing named whatever that says. And according to Wikipedia, they've got some light automatic weapons, some grenades, some improvised rockets and mortars and stuff. They got some anti-tank and some anti-aircraft guns. In 2011, Israel estimated that they had several hundred members who'd received military training. Oh, baby. And let's be clear, I condemn violence against civilians unequivocally on all sides. No one has any right to commit acts of war against unarmed civilians, period, full stop. That's my opinion. Let's get back to numbers. Israel, on the other hand, they have about 170,000 active troops, and they got 615 heavy infantry fighting vehicles, 2,022 medium or main battle tanks. They got 196 F-16s, 83 F-15s, 36 F-35, and 142 attack helicopters, including 43 Apaches. They got 5 submarines, so don't go trying to swim away from Gaza. Obviously, they got their Iron Dome situation. They got 49 battleships. Oh yeah, and they got some really big bombs. And by really big, I mean nukes. Yeah, but don't get it twisted. Hamas has a couple hundred dudes that received military training. And they got some grenades and some improvised RPGs and shit. So how the heck did Israel come to afford all of these tanks? Well, we give them several $billion every year. From 1949 to 2014, it totaled up to $118 billion of basically just all military aid. But we figured that wasn't enough, so now we're about to give them $2 billion more, just, because it's an emergency. Because we figured this many tanks wasn't enough to defend their borders against the terrorists. Just real quick, if you weren't aware, in the year 1850, the area was about 3.8% Jewish. In 1878, the Ottoman census called it 3% Jewish. This dude and some homies came up with Zionism, basically around 1900, end of the 1800s. This whole concept was not a result of the Holocaust, despite what you might have been told. The Balfour Declaration, which established the concept of Israel, was presented to Lord Rothschild, the banker, in 1917. It had nothing to do with getting help winning World War I, but the British did simultaneously promise the Arabs a state in Palestine if they would turn on the Ottoman Empire at the time. Anyways, that's a different. So all the Jewish people started moving there to Palestine, and by 22 it was 11% Jewish. By 45 it was 31% Jewish. This 1931 census of Palestine really clearly shows, though, that of the Muslims, basically all of them were born in Palestine, 98% versus 1% that were from elsewhere that had moved to Palestine. But of the Jews living in Palestine in 31, 58% of them had moved to Palestine, and only 41% had been born there at that point. Which is just a little bit of context for when the UN, after World War II, decided that, okay, here's Palestine, now let's divide that up fairly. So we got 31% of the population, give or take. Let's give them 56% of the land. And most especially this part right here, that's really important for international trade. Then, there was a little war, and then it ended up being more like 78% of the land. But, another little war, and it wound up being 100% of the land, plus some extra bonus parts. Which, they later gave back because it was really, trying to be nice. And actually, because the state of Israel was so nice to the Palestinians, they actually later gave them back 18% of the 22% that they'd wound up with as Zone A in the Oslo Accords, where the Palestinians could actually govern themselves. But the rest of it, they figured they would just settle in and just move in there and demolish the Palestinian homes and build Israeli settlements, despite that being illegal and the UN condemning it, and them promising no, we totally won't do any more of that. Not at all. We'll come back to this in just a second. Because let's be real, the Israeli military needs all of these weapons and tanks and bombs and helicopters, etc., to protect themselves against the jihadist Muslim terrorists that have been killing them since they just wanted a place for them to live, namely the place where the Muslims lived. In fact, the death tolls have been so high among Israelis that you can actually see the bars on this graph. You want to know why U.S. news and U.S. politicians are always talking about how Israel's getting destroyed by terrorists and how Israel's the underdog and how Israel needs our help and we're so unequivocally behind Israel? Well, here's a list of all the pro-Israel PACs, political action committees, that have given this much money over the years to people in Congress, etc., You notice like an increase in lobbying recently? Interesting. We're talking like $40 million plus per year. It's going to Democrats and Republicans alike, although a little bit more to Democrats, especially lately. Homegirl in the House has received more than $1 million just in the year 2021-22. Damn, girl, you're not even on any important subcommittees. What are you up to? $1 million contributed from Israel. For who knows why. Israel, if you give me $1 million, I'll take this video down. Just saying. This is a graph of the average campaign contribution to members of Congress over the years. You notice anything interesting going on here? But let's be fair, there are also pro-Arab PACs that also contribute to Congress and lobby the government. Because, you know, we're fair. We're just looking at the numbers, and the numbers don't lie. Since 1992, total, all these pro-Arab PACs, they've contributed more than $1 million. I mean, come on. Like, literally, since I was born, they've contributed over $1 million. I mean, that's like literally a little bit more than Chantel Brown has received just last year. Just Chantel from pro-Israeli PAC. Total since 1992. And this is from all the pro-Arab PACs that they could possibly dig up. And by they, I mean I'm literally using the Jewish Virtual Library as my source for that. But let's be real. Money has been a big part of the equation ever since the start. But just in case all of that wasn't enough to get this video taken down and my account banned, let's do one step further. You know how not only did they somehow take Israel by surprise, but also it took like 8, 6, 12, 20 hours for the Israeli military to respond in several circumstances? And I mean, you can go and read the articles about Egypt warning them and whether or not what. But let me remind you that a certain dude was Mossad, allegedly. Read Whitney Webb's book, allegedly. They had power over many of the most important people in the world from many different countries. Power they may have acquired through many different ways. Multiple islands were literally bought for this operation. And you know, like a weird temple was built too. I don't know. TikTok, FYI, those are all very publicly available facts. Information reported in major news headlines. That is not misinformation. You cannot yeah, we're supposed to believe that they didn't just not know about the attacks, but it took them this long to respond. And you might believe that if you didn't know about the kind of technological surveillance state that Israel has already implemented. Why would Microsoft be really into doing cloud computing, cloud data centers in Israel, investing a lot in Israel? Why would Israel be a hotbed for digital innovation and entrepreneurship? Gosh, cloud computing, so great. Customers' data being one of their strongest assets. And they have face scanning cameras. They have a database on all Palestinians. It's literally a phone app that Israeli soldiers use to scan faces. They then get tracked biometrically by cameras and sensors all over Palestine. Israeli soldiers have quotas of how many photos they have to take per shift to add to the database. This is publicly available information if you just look for it. You can listen in on any telephone conversation, and they do so actively looking for pressure points and blackmail. Quote, I know people who are doing time in Israeli prisons merely because of their social media activity. But you expect me to believe that they did not know about this fighting force training for an aerial invasion? Anyways, that's all I'm gonna say. You should do your own research. And if you want, you can find me over here, that name, where I've been doing my research, and I just put up an hour and 14-minute video about it, which I was actually researching and putting together completely unrelated to the current attacks. And I posted it in my locals community actually like a day or two before the attacks. I'm only gonna leave this up on YouTube for a little bit. I would really appreciate if you go follow me over there, because this is where I'm going to be posting all my long-form content in the future. YouTube ain't into it. If you want videos posted early, you want the inside scoop, direct access, you can join the locals community for free. Or if you're down to support the work I do, you can support for $5 a month, and that's awesome too. I just want to say one last time that I condemn violence against civilians, no matter who's perpetrating it for what cause. This video is in no way meant to justify the Hamas attacks. The loss of any life is tragic. But most of all, pay attention to the rhetoric, pay attention to the fear-mongering, pay attention to the calls for conflict, and think, who's going to benefit from this war? Who's going to profit?